Your nervous system has been sending you signals for weeks now, maybe months. That strange restlessness that wakes you at 3 a.m., the sudden urge to walk away from situations that used to define you, the exhaustion that runs so deep, sleep doesn't touch it anymore. You've probably tried to logic your way through it, tried to fix it, tried to push through like you always do. But here's what's actually happening. The energetic architecture that's been governing your entire existence is dismantling itself. And the fact that you're hearing these words right now, that's not random. That's confirmation. Let me be direct with you. Before you took your first breath in this body, your consciousness made agreements, specific, binding, energetic agreements with other souls. These weren't casual arrangements, they were complex contracts designed to create the exact conditions necessary for profound evolution. The difficult relationship that keeps repeating, the career path that drains you but won't release you, the family dynamic that's been the same painful pattern for decades, the role you've played that everyone depends on but leaves you empty. These aren't accidents or bad luck. They're the manifestation of contracts you signed before you had language to describe them. And right now, in this exact window of time, one of your primary contracts is reaching its completion point. I know how that sounds. Part of you wants to dismiss this as spiritual fantasy, but another part of you, the part that guided you to this moment, recognizes the truth in what I'm saying. You've felt it. That sense that something fundamental is ending, that the rules that governed your reality are suddenly optional, that the people and situations that had power over you are losing their grip. You haven't been able to name it, but you've been living inside this completion process for longer than you realize. Here's what most people don't understand about soul contracts. They're not punishments, they're not karmic debts in the way popular spirituality describes them. They're precisely calibrated agreements between sovereign consciousness choosing to temporarily limit itself in order to experience specific catalysts for expansion. Think of it like this. Before incarnation, your consciousness existed in a state of complete awareness. You could see the entire landscape of potential timelines, potential experiences, potential growth trajectories. And from that expanded state, you made strategic choices. You looked at certain souls and said, essentially, I will agree to meet you in density. I will agree to forget my true nature temporarily so we can create friction between us. That friction will feel like conflict, like pain, like rejection, like betrayal. But that friction is the exact pressure required to crack open both of our limitations and reveal capacities we couldn't access any other way. And we'll know the contract is complete when the friction stops producing growth and starts producing repetition. That last part is crucial, when the friction stops producing growth and starts producing repetition. Does that sound familiar? Have you noticed that the same argument happens with slight variations but no evolution? That the same disappointment arrives wearing different faces? That you've had the same realization multiple times but the pattern continues unchanged? That's not failure. That's the signal. The contract has delivered everything it was designed to deliver. The lessons have been learned. The capacities have been developed. The evolution has occurred. Now the contract is just running on momentum, and that momentum is what's draining you. Your exhaustion isn't depression. Though it might wear that mask, it's not burnout. Though it shares symptoms, it's your entire energetic system beginning the process of withdrawing the massive amounts of life force that have been allocated to maintaining this contractual agreement. Imagine you've been running complex software in the background of your operating system for years. It's been consuming enormous processing power, memory, energy, and now that software is beginning its shutdown sequence. Everything slows down, everything feels heavier, everything requires more effort, because your system is reallocating resources. The physical body registers this first. You might be experiencing sleep disruptions, not insomnia exactly, but a strange quality to your sleep, where you wake feeling like you've been working all night. You might notice your appetite shifting, foods that sustained you suddenly feeling wrong, or hunger arriving at unusual times. Some people experience temperature sensitivity, feeling cold in warm rooms or overheated without cause. Others notice their senses sharpening, sounds becoming louder, lights becoming brighter, touch becoming more intense. This isn't medical pathology. This is your somatic system processing the energetic release of contractual bonds. Your emotional body does something different. You might find yourself denly crying for no apparent reason or laughing at things that wouldn't normally move you. Memories from years ago surface with vivid clarity, especially memories related to the people and situations connected to your completing contract. You're not regressing, you're reviewing. Your consciousness is doing a final sweep through the entire timeline of the contract, integrating the lessons, extracting the wisdom, preparing the completion. And then there's the mental body. The thoughts that won't stop. The sudden need to understand everything, to make sense of it all, to create meaning from chaos. The obsessive reviewing of conversations, analyzing patterns, trying to figure out what you did wrong or what you could have done differently. Here's the thing. You didn't do anything wrong. The contract is completing exactly as it was designed to. But the mind doesn't like that answer. The mind wants control, wants to believe that if it just thinks hard enough, it can figure out how to make the old pattern work. It can't. And that's precisely the point. Let me tell you about the 3 types of contracts that complete, because recognizing which one you're in changes how you navigate this. The first type is the karmic balancing contract. This is where you and another soul agreed to meet in circumstances that would allow both of you to experience the opposite side of a dynamic you created in a previous timeline. If you were the abandoner before, you become the abandoned. If you held power before, you experience powerlessness, not as punishment, as completion, as the full circle of understanding that comes from experiencing both polarities. These contracts feel the most painful because they often involve deep betrayal, shocking reversals, or devastating losses, and they complete when both parties have fully embodied the wisdom of both positions. The signal that this contract is completing is simple. You stop needing the other person to change, apologize, or understand. Their actions become neutral to you, not through spiritual bypassing or forced forgiveness, but through genuine completion. The second type is the teaching-learning contract. One soul agrees to be the teacher, the other agrees to be the student, and the specific lesson is encoded in the dynamic between you. Maybe you contracted with someone to teach you self-worth by consistently devaluing you until you finally learn to value yourself independent of their approval. Maybe you contracted with someone to teach you boundaries by violating yours until you finally learn to enforce them. Maybe you contracted with someone to teach you discernment by lying to you until you learn to trust your inner knowing over external performance. These contracts complete when the student no longer needs the teacher because the lesson has been fully embodied. The signal is this: the teacher's behavior continues, but it no longer affects you. They can do exactly what they've always done, and you remain centered, clear, boundaried. You've graduated. The third type is the collective service contract. This is less about personal karma or individual lessons, and more about holding a specific frequency or role for the collective field during a particular time window. You might have contracted to be the peacemaker in a family system, absorbing and neutralizing conflict so other members could develop without that interference. You might have contracted to hold pain for a lineage, processing ancestral trauma so future generations could be free of it. You might have contracted to maintain a certain frequency in a workplace, a community, a relationship, stabilizing the field so others could do their work. These contracts complete when the collective no longer needs that specific frequency, when enough evolution has occurred that your role becomes obsolete. The signal is that your presence stops mattering in the old way. People stop seeking you out for the role you've always played. The system continues just fine without your intervention. You become optional, which feels like rejection, but is actually liberation. Now here's where it gets really interesting. As your contract approaches completion, the field itself begins responding to the shift in your energetic signature, and it responds by flooding your awareness with synchronicities. You start seeing number patterns everywhere. 1111, 333, 555. You start hearing the same phrase from multiple unrelated sources in the same week. You start running into people you haven't thought about in years. You start having dreams that feel more real than waking life. Dreams where you're completing things, saying goodbye to places and people, closing doors, walking through gates. These aren't random. They're not your imagination creating meaning from chaos. They're the field communicating with you in the language of symbol and synchronicity, confirming that yes, something major is shifting. Yes, you're perceiving this correctly. Yes, trust what you're sensing. The people connected to your completing contract start behaving strangely. They might suddenly reach out after months or years of silence. They might escalate their behavior, becoming more extreme in their patterns as if trying to re-engage you in the old dynamic. They might disappear completely, ghosting you without explanation. They might have their own crisis that historically would have pulled you into caretaker mode. All of this is the contract itself creating opportunities for completion. Each interaction is a choice point. Do you re-engage in the old pattern? Or do you hold your new frequency and allow the completion to occur? Most people fail completion at this stage. And I need you to understand this clearly because the cost of failure is years, sometimes decades, of unnecessary repetition. The old pattern will present itself one more time. It always does, but it will be dressed slightly differently. Different face, different situation, different story, but the exact same energetic dynamic. If your contract was about learning self-worth through a partner who devalued you, a new person will arrive who seems different but carries the same core frequency. If your contract was about learning boundaries with a narcissistic parent, a friend or boss will appear who triggers the same boundary collapse. If your contract was about people-pleasing and self-abandonment, an opportunity will present itself that requires you to abandon yourself to maintain connection. This is the renegotiation trap. And here's how it works. Your consciousness has completed the contract. You've learned the lessons, developed the capacities, embodied the wisdom, but there's a part of you, usually the wounded inner child or the traumatized aspect, that's terrified of the unknown that comes after completion. That part knows how to navigate the old contract. It has strategies, defenses, familiar pain, but it doesn't know how to navigate freedom. So when the old pattern shows up wearing new clothes, that part of you screams, yes, familiar, safe, I know how to do this. And if you listen to that part instead of your completed consciousness, you sign a new version of the same contract. And the whole process begins again. I've seen people do this 5, 6, 7 times, each time thinking this one is different, this person is different, this situation is different, and each time, 6 months in, realizing with sinking recognition, it's the same contract. So how do you avoid the trap? You have to become absolutely conscious about what completion looks like. Completion is not dramatic. It's not a final confrontation. It's not getting the apology you deserve or the acknowledgement you've earned. It's not one last conversation where you finally make them understand. All of that is ego trying to control the narrative. Real completion happens in your energetic field, not in external action. Here's the conscious completion protocol. And I want you to actually do this, not just understand it intellectually. Find a quiet space where you won't be interrupted. Sit comfortably, close your eyes, and bring your awareness into your heart center. Not your physical heart, but the energetic center in the middle of your chest. Breathe into that space until you feel it activate. Warmth, pressure, expansion, whatever your particular sensation is. Now call forward the person or situation connected to your completing contract. You don't need to visualize them in detail, just hold the energetic signature of that relationship or dynamic in your awareness. And then speak these words, either aloud or silently, with full presence. I acknowledge the sacred contract between us. I honor everything this agreement created. I recognize the growth, the lessons, the capacities I developed through our dynamic. I see clearly what this contract was designed to teach me, and I confirm that those lessons have been received, integrated, and embodied. The contract is complete. I release you from all obligations to me. I release myself from all obligations to you. All energy exchange between us is now returned to its source, cleansed and cleared. All cords connecting us are dissolved with love. I set you free. I set myself free. This contract is complete. Sit with that for as long as you need. You might cry. You might feel relief. You might feel nothing at first, and then have a delayed emotional release hours or days later. However it moves through you is correct. Then comes the crucial part, the sealing. Place both hands over your heart center and visualize or intend a seal of golden light forming over the space where that contract lived in your field. This seal prevents unconscious re-engagement. It's your energetic boundary that says this contract is archived, complete, closed. New agreements are possible, but this specific configuration is finished. Do this practice once with full presence. You don't need to repeat it. You don't need to process it for weeks. One conscious completion with full energetic commitment is sufficient. The field will handle the rest. Now let's talk about what happens after, because this is what nobody prepares you for. There's a void period. It can last weeks or months. During this time, you'll feel untethered. The contract that was structuring your reality is gone, but the new structure hasn't formed yet. You're in pure potentiality, and pure potentiality feels like nothing. Your mind will panic. It will tell you that you made a mistake, that you should reach out, that you should fix things, that you should go back. Your emotional body will cycle through grief, anger, fear, numbness. Your physical body might feel exhausted or restless or both. This void is not a problem to solve. It's a sacred passage. You're in the space between stories, between identities, between timelines, and what you do in this space determines everything about what comes next. Most people cannot tolerate the void. They immediately seek another relationship, another job, another project, another identity to fill the space. And in doing so, they unconsciously sign a new contract very similar to the one they just completed, because they haven't learned to exist without external structure defining them. The invitation of the void is to discover who you are without the contract. What do you actually want when you're not performing a role? What brings you joy when you're not trying to earn worth? What do you create when you're not trying to prove something, or fix someone, or maintain peace? Who are you when nobody needs you to be anything? These questions don't have immediate answers. You have to live into them. You have to sit in the discomfort of not knowing. You have to resist the urge to fill the space with noise and distraction and new drama. And if you can do that, if you can stay present in the void without collapsing back into old patterns, something remarkable happens. Your frequency begins to stabilize at a completely new level. Things that used to trigger you become neutral. You notice the old pattern presenting itself, And instead of engaging, you simply observe it with curiosity. Oh, there's that dynamic. Interesting. And you keep moving. Situations that would have hooked you for months now resolve in days or hours. You develop a kind of energetic discernment that's instant and accurate. You can feel within seconds whether something is aligned with your new frequency or trying to pull you back into an old contract. Opportunities start appearing that were literally impossible before your completion, not because the universe is rewarding you, but because you're free. Equancy can now match opportunities that exist at a higher resonance, the job you're perfectly suited for, the collaboration that feels effortless, the relationship that's based on mutual sovereignty rather than need and wound, the creative project that flows. These things couldn't find you before because your energetic signature was still bound to the old contract. Now you're available. People from your past might reach out during this phase, and you'll notice something striking. You can interact with them without falling back into the old dynamic. You can have a conversation with the person who used to devastate you, and you remain completely centered, not because you've built walls or spiritual bypassed your feelings, but because the contract is actually complete. They're now just a person. Not a trigger, not a wound, not a story, just a person. Your body changes too. That exhaustion lifts. Sleep becomes restorative again. You might notice you need less of it. Your appetite normalizes. Food tastes better. Your senses recalibrate. That heightened sensitivity mellows into a kind of pleasant clarity. You have more energy, more vitality, more presence, because all the life force that was being used to maintain the contract is now available for your actual life. And here's the part that might surprise you. You'll start to feel gratitude for the contract. Not the spiritual bypassing kind of gratitude where you pretend the pain didn't hurt, but genuine appreciation for how perfectly designed that experience was to create the exact evolution you needed. You'll see the other person not as the villain in your story, but as the soul who loved you enough to play that role. You'll recognize that without that contract, you wouldn't have developed the strength, the discernment, the compassion, the wisdom you now carry. The contract was hard, it was supposed to be, and it was also sacred. This gratitude is how you know the completion is real. When you can hold the full truth of both the pain and the purpose without needing to collapse either one, when you can say, yes, that hurt like hell, and yes, it was exactly what I needed, that's integration, that's mastery. Now, I want to address something important. Some of you watching this are recognizing that you have multiple contracts completing simultaneously. Maybe it's a relationship contract and a career contract and a family system contract, all hitting their completion point in the same window. If that's you, understand this is not coincidence and it's not punishment, it's acceleration. There are specific time windows when the field supports mass completion. We're in one of those windows now. The collective frequency is rising fast enough that contracts that might have taken lifetimes to complete in previous eras are completing in months or years. Your soul is taking advantage of this acceleration. Yes, it's intense. Yes, it can feel like your entire life is falling apart simultaneously. But what's actually happening is a quantum leap in your evolution. Multiple limitations releasing at once. Multiple frequencies upgrading at once. Multiple timelines collapsing and reorganizing at once. The protocol is the same. Conscious completion for each contract. Honoring the void. Refusing to fill the space with new unconscious agreements, staying present with the discomfort of transformation. You can do this, you're built for this. The fact that multiple contracts are completing means you're ready for it. Some of you are also recognizing that the contract completing isn't with another person, it's with yourself. Maybe you contracted to experience yourself as small, powerless, unworthy for a specific period of time so you could learn to choose differently. And maybe you contracted to forget your true nature so the remembering would be profound. Maybe you contracted to play a role that was never actually you so you could eventually step into authenticity. These self-contracts complete when you simply decide they're complete. No external permission needed, no validation required. You just declare, that agreement is finished. I am no longer available for that experience of myself. And then you have to live into that declaration, which means catching yourself every time you start to collapse back into the old identity and choosing the new one instead. It means disappointing people who prefer your contracted self. It means tolerating the discomfort of being seen differently. It means practice, repetition, consistency until the new identity becomes more natural than the old one. Here's what I want you to understand as we come to the end of this. The completion of your soul contract isn't the end of your journey, it's a graduation. You're not done, you're ready for what's next. And what's next requires the version of you that the contract created. You couldn't access what's coming in your contracted state. You weren't ready, you didn't have the capacity, the muscles weren't developed, the wisdom wasn't embodied, the frequency wasn't stable. But now you're ready. The contract you're completing was preparation, it was training, it was the crucible that forged you into someone capable of holding like a much larger vision, a much broader impact, a much deeper love. The you on the other side of completion has access to gifts, opportunities, relationships, and creative expressions that the contracted you couldn't even perceive. This is why the completion feels so destabilizing. You're not just ending something, you're becoming someone new. And becoming someone new, while the old identity is still trying to assert itself, creates dissonance, friction, chaos. Let it. Chaos is the chrysalis dissolving. You're not falling apart. You're reorganizing at a higher order. Trust the timing of this. Trust that if you're hearing these words, if this found you, if something in your system is saying, yes, this is me, this is what's happening, then you're exactly where you need to be. The completion is underway, whether you consciously participate or not, but conscious participation accelerates it, cleans it up, prevents unnecessary suffering from renegotiation. Do the completion practice I gave you. Sit in the void without filling it. Notice when the old pattern tries to re-engage and make a difference. Rent choice. Let your body recalibrate. Let your emotions process. Let your mind question and doubt and eventually quiet. Let yourself be in transition without knowing exactly where you're going. Let yourself grieve what's ending while staying open to what's beginning. You're not doing this alone. Every soul who's ever completed a major contract walked this same passage. You're part of a lineage of conscious evolution, of beings who chose density and limitation specifically so they could experience the liberation of transcending it. That's what you are. That's what you're doing. And on behalf of the version of you that exists on the other side of this completion, the one who's free, clear, powerful, sovereign, joyful, thank you for staying with the process. Thank you for not giving up when it got hard. Thank you for choosing consciousness over comfort. Thank you for completing what you came here to complete. The contract is finishing. You're right on time. Everything that needs to fall away will fall away. Everything that's meant to emerge will emerge. Your only job is to stay present, stay honest, and keep choosing the highest version of yourself, even when the old patterns are screaming for attention. This is your completion. Honor it. The field is with you. Your higher self is guiding you. And the life waiting for you on the other side of this is more extraordinary than the contracted you could imagine. Step through. You're ready.